Wow. Today is April the 8th, 2019. Hard to believe that we have passed so quickly into the fourth month of 2019. Today, my live broadcast is to talk about the deep state and about the fact that the deep state is a myth that has been established or in the mind of Trump and Trump supporters um, that says that there's an entity basically that is at work, a governmental conspiracy that goes beyond the president um, and tries to dictate or tell the president what to do or how to do it, and makes up the rules of the land, and sounds like it's assumed that it is a higher power of uh, I guess the wealthiest corporations and those kinds of things, made up of a lot of people. Um, you know, from my perspective, the deep state is just another one of those bullshit terms that have been made up to kind of like the same term as fake news. It's something that was made up to get people's minds in such a place that they could be easily manipulated by believing that there is some higher power beyond the president that is causing many of the upsets and investigations into the current 45th president of the United States. And I just really want to go on record as saying it's just total bullshit. Stuff made up to kind of for Trump to um, present himself as somebody who's being attacked constantly, always having to fight everybody else. And in fact, not too long ago, I posted on a site some things in reference to the things that Trump has done or spread fake news about or tweeted. Um, that was completely insane. And one of his followers came back and referred to me as an idiot, stupid, uh, having my head up my ass, those kinds of things. And that Trump is one of the most scrutinized presidents in the history of the presidency. And I find it funny because while this individual was trying to convince me that Trump is the victim of this radical group of the deep state, that all these other people during this time that he was trying to defend Trump, he was actually, every other word he spoke, he was bashing President Obama and talking about all the horrible things that he had done during his presidency, and how the mainstream media and stuff has gotten to people like me, and basically we're all just a bunch of idiots. And in all the information that he put out and stated about the kinds of things that are going on, and the things that Americans are wrong about, who are, he called them never Trumpers, including me, is that we have no idea what the reality is. And I'd like to say, that's the exact sentiment that the opposite side has in reference to the people who seem to be the Trumpers, who give a lot of leeway to this man that they would not give to other presidents of the United States, talking about the Robert Mueller report, coming out and saying, hey, there was no Russian collusion, based upon Barr's comments or summary of Robert Mueller's report. And then Trump turning around and saying, hey, we got some people who are, being unethical and leaking information about the report. If Trump knew that there was no collusion, no Russian involvement in the 2016 election, or he had no part in that conspiracy, he would not be worried about the leaking of the Robert Mueller report. If the report totally vindicates him, then he should want the American public and the people to be able to see it and to show that he is being above board and that Robert Mueller has found him to be completely devoid of any suspicion or activity in Russia collusion. And even Trump's son is posting stuff about, his dad didn't do it. Someone needs to do something to the people who accused him. Adam Schiff needs to step down. Trump immediately took to Twitter and they started selling things about Adam Schiff being a pencil neck and that he needed to step down from the investigative committee and that Trump was the victim in all of this. And really, the people, the individuals that are the victim in all of this are the American people, the voters, Hillary Clinton and the comments about, the many emails that had these things in them. And during Trump's initial comments about the election saying that Hillary Clinton's people were going to be interfering in the election. They were going to try to make sure he lost. And then in every situation where he says someone else is going to do something, the Democrats are going to do this, it turns around that it was Trump and his den of alligators in the swamp who were actually the ones who were involved or did something, or there wasn't quite enough proof to completely indict or file charges that the president of the United States was lying. So Robert Mueller did what he could do, which would be to say, there just wasn't beyond the shadow of a doubt the kind of conviction that would be needed to prove that the president was involved in the Russian collusion. It does not mean that Trump and his family are not guilty. It just means that there's other people who have information who probably didn't come forward or show up in the investigation in Robert Mueller's report. I haven't read the report. I don't know what it says. Some of the people that leaked information said that there were summary pages that Robert Mueller had prepared so that confidentiality could be maintained in the report, because there's some information in there that requires security clearance. And in order to protect that, he did make a summary of each part of the report that could have easily just been given to the American public or to the House. The House has clearance that they should be able to get the full report, but the American people would be able to see the parts of the report as they were written by Robert Mueller, not as they're redefined or rewritten from the perception of Barr at the direction of Donald Trump, who just happens to be William Barr's boss, and he also has a conflict of interest in all of this. And even in the very depths of it, if you are a Trumper and you support everything that he says and you believe all of the many lies that he has told against many people, then you would at least be okay with having the summary of that report released. I mean, if you're all about truth and integrity and wanting to know that the president, show people that the president was a good choice, then you shouldn't have any problem whatsoever with that report being released. And as far as President Obama goes, I mean, I think the most devastating news that I heard in reference to President Obama, you talk about plutonium being sold or uranium or whatever that chemical was, uh, to other countries, and they were going to give this stuff to blah blah blah, and Hillary and Benghazi, and I would like to point out that President Obama took complete responsibility for the Benghazi thing, and some of those people involved in Benghazi, the soldiers and stuff who were injured or wounded, they disobeyed direct orders and didn't follow what they were told. So some of them ended up dead. So some of it, the responsibility is on those individuals, whether you like it or not. But the most horrible thing that I've seen come out during the President Obama administration was when he wore a tan suit to an event. I mean, that's the thing that made top news. A lot of, let's say, Obama haters or Obama negators went online and just talked about how uncouth it was and how he had wore this tan suit, pretty much in the same way that when Michelle Obama was the first lady and she visited with the Queen of England, how dare she wear a dress that is sleeveless and showing her, arms and stuff to the Queen of England. And then at one point, it was that she was touching the Queen of England, which was totally inappropriate or not allowed. But the Queen of England had no problem with it. In fact, she seemed to adore President Obama and Michelle because they are such a graceful, upstanding couple who are truly, truly in love with one another and have two beautiful daughters. And the Queen of England respected them, took them at face value, and seemed to enjoy being around them. And this is a lady who's been in power since maybe 70 years. She's going to be, I think, approximately 93 this year. I believe her birthday is like April I want to say the 20th or 21st. And she is an amazing woman who has a good sixth sense about people from other countries. And she has to have, because she was raised in the aristocracy and was a royal and taught in much of the laws and statutes of her country and how to behave as a royal. And so she has held that position for a long, long time. And, when she wasn't particularly fond of having President Trump and Melania visit her country, and I believe there was a small visit. And during that visit, I remember President Trump walking in front of the Queen, which is totally disrespectful. And hardly no one who was a Trump follower felt that what he did was, didn't seem to care that it was inappropriate or rude behavior to treat the Queen of her own country that way. So Trump gets on Twitter and says many things, makes blanketed statements, generalized statements, and those statements, things like Democrats have done blah blah blah, Democrats have done this or that, and then I hear from some of his supporters that he's really trying to be bipartisan in his approach. There is nothing about Trump's administration that is bipartisan or that he's trying to reach both sides, reach across the aisle. Everything is do it my way or it's the highway. It's the Trump motto. I'm the boss. I'm God of this country. And you do what I tell you. And you ask how do I want it done as you're jumping to get it done. You don't bother to ask questions or speculate about my decisions. regardless of my limited knowledge of security processes and procedures. It's really difficult for a president of the United States to really read and understand things such as security, national security issues, not outing Navy SEALs, or some of the other things like people that legitimately uh, gather intel on behalf of the United States, and Trump blurting out the names of people in Britain or other countries that really need to be kept confidential and should never have been shared with in should never have been shared in the way that it was shared, putting the lives of people at risk. And yet, nobody seemed to have a problem with that. And if President Obama had done the same thing, or President Clinton, uh, there would have been a different attitude about, well, they did it, they put the lives of these people in jeopardy, blah, blah, blah. But when you get to the side of Trump, people are like, oh, okay, he's really great. He doesn't take anything from anyone. Well, that should scare the living hell out of you, because this man, it means that if he decides he wants to blow up a few countries, then what's to stop him from doing it if he orders the military to do it? And it could start a all in all out nuclear war, the Third World War, whatever. But many of you are like, hey, yeah, I'll go fight. There's not going to be a fight to it if you bring in nuclear warheads and missiles and things like that. You're going to have great devastation. You're going to have a lot of people killed. And in some ways, I personally feel that as a parent, as an uncle, really as any older adult in this country, you should be thinking about what kind of future are we giving to our children? What kind of future are we setting our children up for? Are we giving them hope? Are we giving them the ability to govern in a new way, and to change the way that things have always been? Basically a two-party system of Republicans and Democrats. Um, I have to say, in the past, I think that the majority of presidents, were able to work with both sides of the Democrat and the Republican side to come up with a solution that was more bipartisan. I think that Donald Trump is the first president who tweeted so many nasty things about so many people and has made tons of enemies because of the things that he has said about people, how he destroys people's reputations, says the most ludicrous and outrageous things, and uses, and I've talked about this before, like 15 different logical fallacies to ensnare people into his way of thinking. And some of them are victims to these logical fallacies, and some are not. White supremacists seem to enjoy having Trump as the man that he is, because they think it's funny that he treats people the way he treats them, and that he is a classist snob, and he thinks that his family and he are just the greatest and above the law, and he surrounds himself with people who think that way as well. Mitch McConnell being a number one person who does everything in his power to protect Trump, and a lot of people are saying, the Democrats are doing stuff to try to block Trump being able to fulfill positions in district courts and things like that, Ninth Circuit Court, to get people into place. And then Mitch McConnell's like, well, we're going to change the rules a little bit here, and make it so that we only have to have 51 votes. And it's just really an underhanded way to pass, and get people vetted quickly and into the positions that can destroy laws and things that were decided by the Supreme Court many, many years ago. So if you get the right people into play, then you can manage to destroy all of this kind of stuff. And so what we've got is we've got these rumors that Trump is always referring to the deep state, fake news, mainstream media, all the things that any kind of dictator or any kind of person seeking to have a totalitarian rule over the government would try to push that everybody's trying to be socialists and this kind of thing, because what people are acting from and responding to is their greatest fear. And if you are somebody who's saying that Trump needs to do these things because of their greatest fears, Muslims are going to come in here, they're going to shoot up, their terrorists are going to shoot up and destroy our country. You're going to have Mexicans in here and they're taking our jobs, which I might add that many people would not work for the wage that these people get. And I happened to be able to listen to a little bit of some stuff that a friend was listening to, and I love her dearly, but she was listening to this stuff on deep state stuff, and I heard this guy talking, and it was obvious that his dedication and devoutness was to Donald Trump, and to say that there's this deep state that is trying to destroy him as president and come up against him because of all the great things he's trying to do for our country, and that he's trying to stabilize the economy, and the economy couldn't be anywhere further from that state. And as far as unemployment goes, I think we've had the kinds of jobs that we've had because many of the rankings and ratings that are coming out are still from the Obama administration and the things that they put forth to have work in this country. Personally, I'm somebody who was laid off just shortly before my 50th birthday, and I'm turning 55, and I have applied for thousands of jobs. And those are anywhere from, store clerk to, instructional designer, which happens to be one of my degrees. And I've been interviewed for about a handful of jobs out of those thousands. Some I never hear anything back, and others, people simply are hired into those positions. Maybe they have more experience. I'm not saying none of them do, but majority have been younger people who have ended up in those jobs. And I can remember a time when I was the person who was the younger person who got a job and not realizing that maybe someone young or older had been thrown out or not given the possibility of the job because I was available. And, you could work me hard. I wasn't married, no children. And so I could work overtime and it wasn't an issue. And I think now we have all these laws that are supposed to prevent racism, discrimination in the workplace, and to prevent ageism. And I think that companies have just gotten their HR, their human resources departments, to work for them to try to find a way out of anybody who alleges a certain unfair thing that was done during an interview or maybe in the workplace, and to then brand or mark those people as troublemakers and to get them out of the system. And that way they can protect themselves from lawsuits and then keep the people who actually are guilty of committing those kinds of lawsuits, creating situations that lead to those lawsuits and to protect them. I know about USC's, had a doctor, a gynecologist who apparently was saying some inappropriate things to women over about a 3-decade period. Many people were made aware of it because there were reports made and allegations, but this person was allowed to continue on until local news sources got a hold of it and printed it in the paper. And then this individual was either resigned or was let go. And I'm not sure what the outcomes are now. I'm sure there are lawsuits and settlements to be made because of what he did. But the fact is, for 3 decades, this individual was allowed to do these things. And being a doctor and having nurses report it, and then having it kind of just swept under the rug, tells you the state of the country. And more recently, for myself, entered a job interview where I was on the application. They ask you if you've been referred or you are related to anybody who works for their institution, and that's on the application, which I feel should probably be removed because I listed my spouse as being that individual. And during an interview that I had, I was immediately asked about who had referred me to the position, and I felt uncomfortable with the question, but I answered it. And then the questions that preceded that were actually questions that were more about, kind of my relationship with my spouse. And then, no one ever sent me a copy of the job description, which was no longer available to me up on USC site. And so eventually, because of the outcome, I was not hired. And then one of those individuals went to my spouse and said the reason we didn't hire him is because all he could do was talk about you during the interview and not the job. And these were two individuals that during the time that they interviewed me, it felt like they didn't even know what the position would actually be doing, and didn't offer to send me the interview, which I was unable to obtain during that process. So they went with someone else. I made an appointment to go to human resources based upon a suggestion that was made when I contacted the VP of that the education school at USC. And so I went to a meeting and talked with someone, and then the response that I got back was, well, we don't believe that you were discriminated against based on marital status. It was because of who you were related to. Well, who I'm related to is because I'm married to the individual. And so, you're kind of splitting hairs there, and given this what I call logical fallacy. It was based on marital status, but it wasn't. And so you didn't get the job. Now, it's not a diversity issue, diversity and equity issue, but, if you want me to, I'll contact the Rossier School of Education and let them know that this thing occurred, and you can ask them to deal with it, or you could follow the chain of command, which would be to contact the supervisor of the individuals that interviewed you.